Imagine stumbling across like a 66 million year old crime scene.
Right.
You don't just find the body of the victim, you find the actual murder weapon itself still just completely securely embedded in the victim's skull.
Which is incredibly
It's
rare.
wild. So, welcome to this custom deep dive, everyone. You're here because you want to just bypass all that information overload and get straight to the really fascinating core of the science.
Exactly.
And that is exactly our mission today. We are unpacking a literal cold case from the late Cretaceous period.
It is, honestly, arguably one of the most mechanically fascinating fossil sites that's ever been excavated.
I mean, I can see why.
Yeah, because, well, paleontology usually forces us to rely on these isolated fragments.
Mm.
Like a femur over here, or maybe a crushed rib cage over there.
Right, just bits and pieces.
Exactly. We build these complex models and run ecological simulations. But we are, at the end of the day, fundamentally engaged in educated guesswork about how these animals actually interacted.
Like, did they fight? Did they just ignore each other?
Right. But this specific fossil just completely changes that dynamic. It provides a literal smoking gun. It connects a predator to its victim in a single, undeniable event.
So the sources on the desk today include this really fascinating May 2026 article from technoscience.net.
Like a great breakdown.
It really is, and it details a highly technical study that was published in the scientific journal PeerJ. Plus, we are also looking at this incredibly evocative reconstruction illustration by an artist named Jen Hall.
That art really brings it to life.
It totally does.
Mhm.
The hook for you today is that we aren't just examining a static, pile of dusty bones. We are unpacking a preserved split-second moment of brutal violence where a Tyrannosaurus Rex actually drove its tooth into the face of a massive herbivore.
And to really appreciate the gravity of this fossil, we should probably look at where it came from.
Elk Creek, right?
Yep, the Hell Creek Formation in Montana. This near-complete skull was pulled from there back in 2005.
Hell Creek is basically famous.
Oh, it's essentially the holy grail for late Cretaceous ecosystems. It's like this perfect geological snapshot of the world right before the asteroid impact.
So it's a really big deal. And the victim in this specific scenario is an Edmontosaurus.
Right.
And for you listening, an Edmontosaurus isn't some small, defenseless little prey animal. This is a massive duck-billed herbivore.
They were huge.
Yeah, we are talking about an animal that could grow up to 40 feet long and weigh several tons.
Definitely not an easy target.
No, not at all. And while finding bite marks on dinosaur bones from Hell Creek is like a relatively common occurrence, this skull is a total anomaly.
It really is.
The researchers didn't just find a scrape or a puncture wound. They found a broken theropod tooth completely anchored into the facial bone.
Fused right into the bone matrix.
Okay, let's unpack this because it is functionally identical to a detective finding a bullet lodged in a brick wall. But that bullet still has the shooter's literal fingerprints just fused to the metal.
That is actually a really highly accurate way to look at it.
I mean, it's the best analogy I could think of.
It works perfectly because it elevates the fossil from just, a biological specimen to an actual historical recording.
But wait, before we just hand down a guilty verdict to the T-Rex, I want to look at the mechanics of the environment.
Okay, let's do it.
Because Montana, 66 million years ago, was crowded with different theropods, like bipedal carnivorous dinosaurs.
Oh, absolutely. It was a very dangerous place.
You had Dakotaraptors, you had juvenile tyrannosaurs, you had other mid-sized predators running around.
Right, lots of suspects.
Exactly. So my immediate thought is that we need to prove this wasn't just a random carnivore. But how do we know for absolute certain that this tooth belongs to a T-Rex and not some other giant carnivore wandering around Montana 66 million years ago?
Well, there has to be a specific morphological signature on that tooth to single out a full-grown Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Right, it can't just be a generic big tooth.
Exactly. And that requirement for definitive proof is exactly what drove the researchers from the University of Alberta and the Museum of the Rockies to conduct what is essentially a comparative forensics lab.
CSI Cretaceous period.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
You cannot just glance at a large tooth in a piece of bone and just declare it belongs to the most famous dinosaur in the world.
You'd get laughed out of the science community.
You really would. They had to look at the microscopic morphology of the tooth itself.
Which means looking at the serrations and the structure, right?
Correct. Theropod teeth generally feature these cutting edges called carinae.
Carinae, okay.
And those edges are lined with tiny serrations known as denticles.
Like a steak knife.
Exactly like a steak knife.
Yeah.
By analyzing the denticle so How many of these tiny serrations exist per millimeter? Researchers can actually narrow down the exact species.
Oh, wow. So it's literally like a fingerprint.
It really is.
Hmm.
Furthermore, most theropod teeth are blade-like. They are flattened side to side, specifically designed to just slice through flesh.
But a T-Rex tooth is different.
Very different. A mature T-Rex tooth is highly robust. It's almost D-shaped in its cross-section.
Think of it not like a slicing knife, but like a railroad spike being driven by a pile driver.
That is a perfect biomechanical anatomy.
It's designed to penetrate and shatter, not just cut.
Exactly. And the embedded tooth in this Edmontosaurus skull possessed that distinct, robust cross-section and the specific dentical density that definitively matched the dental records of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
So they absolutely nailed the suspect.
They did. The sheer thickness of the tooth was the unmistakable evolutionary signature of a bone-crushing predator.
Identifying the tooth is one thing, but the logistics of how they actually studied this in the Piaget study is one of the wildest details in our sources today.
Oh, the hospital visit.
Yes. It obviously cannot pry the tooth out of the skull to measure it.
No, you would destroy a priceless 66-million-year-old piece of evidence.
Right, you can't just take a hammer and chisel to it.
Yeah.
So the researchers actually packed up this massive, incredibly heavy fossil rock and transported it to a local human hospital.
It sounds completely absurd.
They literally wheeled a dinosaur skull into a modern medical facility to run it through their clinical CT scanners.
I know, but what's fascinating here is that medical scanning technology is currently driving a total renaissance in paleontology.
Really? Just standard hospital scanner?
Yeah, because a surface visual only confirms that a broken tooth is present. To understand the actual mechanics of the attack, the researchers needed to see inside the solid bone.
To measure the trajectory and stuff.
Exactly, to measure the exact trajectory and depth of the tooth.
I have to pause here because the physics of that scan seem completely counterintuitive to me.
How so?
Well, both the Edmontosaurus bone and the T-Rex tooth have been sitting in the earth for 66 million years.
Right.
They have been entirely replaced by minerals. They're both literally solid rock at this point.
They are.
So how does a medical CT scanner, which is, calibrated to differentiate between soft human tissue and human bone, tell the difference between rock and rock?
It comes down to radiodensity and the specific mechanics of how fossilization works.
Okay, lay it on me.
An X-ray, or a CT scan, basically measures how much radiation is absorbed by the material it passes through.
Right, denser stuff blocks more X-rays.
Exactly. And even though the entire fossil structure has turned to stone, the different biological materials fossilized in uniquely different ways.
Oh, I see.
The minerals that seeped in to replace the incredibly dense enamel of the T-Rex tooth, they have a completely different radiodensity than the minerals that replace the porous, honeycomb-like structure of the Edmontosaurus's facial bone.
So the scanner is reading those distinct density layers.
Precisely.
It's effectively drawing a 3D boundary line of the hidden tooth inside the rock.
Yes. The CT scan provided this flawless three-dimensional rendering of the tooth's penetration without a single physical tool ever touching the fossil.
That is just incredible technology.
But what they found inside was staggering. The scans revealed exactly how deeply the tooth had been driven into the bone before snapping off.
Which gives us the kinetic energy of the impact, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if a mature T-Rex tooth is structurally comparable to a railroad spike, designed to withstand thousands of pounds of pressure, the chaotic force required to snap that tooth completely in half is almost unfathomable.
The force parameters are totally off the charts.
We were talking about a collision of immense violence.
We really are. We know the T-Rex had one of the highest bite forces of any terrestrial animal ever.
Like how high?
Estimated anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 pounds of pressure.
That is terrifying.
And the CT scans confirmed that the predator delivered a maximum force strike directly into the bone.
Just a full power bite.
Yes, it penetrated deep enough that the lateral torque of the struggling animals sheared the massive tooth clean off at the root.
Wow. My next thought, though, goes to the actual context of that bite.
Okay.
If we know the force was immense, how do we establish that this was an active, dynamic battle?
You're wondering if it was just scavenging.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm looking at this critically, couldn't this just be a scavenger scenario?
That's a fair question.
Let's say the Edmontosaurus died of disease, or maybe starvation, and a T-Rex wanders by, finds a free meal, takes a massive bite, and simply breaks its tooth on the carcass.
To rule out scavenging, we have to analyze the specific biomechanics of where the bite landed.
Okay.
The medical scans pinpointed the embedded tooth precisely in the nasal region of the skull, the snout.
The snout.
Yes, directly on the snout.
But I mean, if I'm eating a dead animal, I'm going for the flanks or the viscera. I want the soft, calorie-dense meat.
Right.
Biting down on the hardest, most heavily armored part of a carcass's face makes zero biomechanical sense for a scavenger.
Your deduction aligns perfectly with the physical evidence.
It just doesn't add up for a scavenger.
No, it doesn't. Scavengers instinctively target the energy-rich, accessible portions of a body. The snout of an Edmontosaurus offers almost no nutritional value whatsoever.
It's all bone and gristle.
It is essentially sheer bone and cartilage. A bite to the specific anatomical location strongly implies a direct head-on confrontation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the location of the bite alone suggests this herbivore was standing upright and facing its attacker.
Yes, looking right at it.
Our sources include that illustration by Jen Hall, and it brilliantly visualizes this medical data. I want to paint this picture for you, listening.
This is a striking image.
Imagine a dense, lush, late Cretaceous forest. The sunlight is filtering through the canopy, and in the center of a clearing you have a massive T-Rex locked in high-speed, face-to-face combat with this large, striped Edmontosaurus.
It's a terrifying scene.
The herbivore is rearing back, trying to defend itself, but the T-Rex has its jaws clamped violently directly onto the Edmontosaurus's snout. It is an incredibly chaotic, brutal moment.
The reconstruction perfectly translates the pathology into a living scene.
It really does.
The T-Rex likely ambushed the Edmontosaurus in the front, totally bypassing the massive body and going straight for the head to neutralize the animal's defensive capabilities and bring it down quickly.
But even with the unusual location of the bite, I still see a slight loophole in the timeline.
Oh, what's the loophole?
Even if it was a head-on collision, how do we know the Edmontosaurus didn't somehow, survive the ambush, escape, and then die of something else years later with the tooth still stuck in its face?
That is the crucial question. And the final definitive answer to the timeline lies in the cellular histology of the bone itself.
The actual cells.
Yes. When the researchers analyzed the CT scans, they closely examined the biological condition of the bone matrix immediately surrounding the embedded tooth.
And what did they find?
They found absolutely zero evidence of bone healing.
Wait, no healing at all, which means no osteoblast reaction.
Precisely the mechanism. Bone is dynamic, living tissue. When a living vertebrate sustains an injury, especially a massive traumatic fracture involving a foreign object, the body immediately mounts a physiological response.
It tries to fix itself.
Exactly. Cells called osteoblasts rush to the site of the trauma. They rapidly begin to lay down what is called woven bone.
Woven bone.
Woven bone is this sort of chaotic, fast-building biological scaffold. It's designed to stabilize the injury before it eventually remodels into stronger, organized lamellar bone.
It's basically the body's emergency biological glue. So the cellular processes just froze.
It completely stopped.
Which means the impact itself was fatal.
It had to be.
The sheer shock, the trauma, or perhaps a subsequent catastrophic neck injury from the torque of the bite just ended the animal's life instantaneously.
It's intense to think about.
The timeline of this Edmontosaurus ended the exact microsecond that tooth snapped off.
It is a totally sobering realization when you look at the fossil. You are quite literally looking at the exact biological moment of death preserved in stone.
So what does this all mean for our broader understanding of the late Cretaceous period?
Well, it has huge implications.
Because we have a dead Edmontosaurus, and we have a T-Rex that left the scene missing a very large tooth. Why does this specific 66-million-year-old interaction command so much attention in the modern scientific community today?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally dismantles one of the most persistent, long-standing debates in paleontology regarding Tyrannosaurus Rex behavior.
The scavenger debate.
Yes. For decades, there was this robust debate championed by paleontologists like Jack Horner, arguing that the T-Rex was not actually an apex predator.
Right, which sounds crazy to most people.
It does. The theory suggested its massive size made it too slow to hunt, its arms were too small to grapple prey, and its massive olfactory bulbs meant it basically relied on smell to find rotting carcasses.
So the argument positioned the T-Rex essentially as a giant terrestrial vulture, just bullying smaller predators away from their kills rather than actively hunting on its own.
Exactly.
And while a T-Rex would undoubtedly scavenge a free meal if it found one, because frankly, Passing up free calories in nature is just a bad survival strategy.
Any predator will scavenge given the chance.
Right. But this single skull utterly shatters the idea that they were obligate scavengers, meaning they only scavenged.
Yes, it completely disproves that.
Because you don't get a tooth embedded deep into the snout of a massive living herbivore without an incredibly high-speed, active, and highly dangerous predatory strike.
This fossil is the definitive counterargument. It provides rare, tangible proof of aggressive frontal predatory behavior.
It proves they were killers.
It shows the T-Rex actively engaged and took down large, living, dangerous prey. It absolutely confirms their status as active apex predators in their ecosystem.
And for you listening, this is exactly why this specific deep dive matters.
It changes how we view them.
Completely, because it is incredibly easy to walk through a natural history museum, look up at those towering, articulated dinosaur skeletons, and just view them as static architecture.
We just see old bones.
We see them as dusty rocks wired together on a metal frame. But the science detailed in the Piaget study reminds us that these fossils represent intensely dynamic, adrenaline-fueled biological events.
They were living, breathing, fighting animals.
The skull isn't just a skeleton. It is a frozen, high-definition recording of a chaotic struggle for survival.
It proves that paleontology, when combined with modern technology, acts as a literal time machine.
It really does. We aren't just categorizing bones anymore. We are reconstructing the actual behaviors, the physics, and the terrifying realities of a vanished world.
And if we pull back and look at the broader philosophical implication of taphonomy, which is the study of how organisms fossilize, it highlights how profoundly rare this level of intimacy is in the fossil record.
Because usually you just find one animal at a time.
Exactly. We are not just analyzing the isolated anatomy of one species here. We are looking at the fatal intersection of two species.
The predator and the prey.
We see the predator's weaponry and the prey's vulnerability locked together in one continuous, undisturbed piece of stone. It completely changes the fidelity with which we can understand the ecology of the late Cretaceous period.
It is phenomenal to realize that all of that data, all of that microscopic biological drama, was just waiting patiently in the dirt of Montana for 66 million years until we finally invented the medical scanners capable of reading it.
It's just waiting to be found.
So to quickly recap the journey we've taken today,
We covered a lot of ground.
we really did. We started at a dusty dig site in the Hell Creek Formation, investigating a massive Edmontosaurus skull pulled from the earth back in 2005.
Then we looked at the teeth.
Right. We unpacked the microscopic morphology of theropod teeth, the denticles, and the robustness to prove the absolute identity of the attacker.
The T-Rex?
Then we followed researchers as they literally wheeled a rock into a hospital, utilizing medical CT scanners to differentiate between distinct mineral radiodensities.
Which revealed the massive kinetic force of the bite.
And finally, we analyzed the complete lack of osteoblastic cellular response in the bone to prove this was a fatal face-to-face showdown.
Permanently settling the debate over how the T-Rex lived and hunted.
As we conclude this analysis today, I know you had a final thought you wanted to share about this.
I do, yes. I want to leave you with the final thought concerning the sheer scale of deep time.
Okay.
If a single broken tooth lodged in a piece of facial bone can so visibly and perfectly capture a violent, split-second interaction from 66 million years ago, how many other fleeting, microscopic stories of prehistoric life are currently locked away in the rocks beneath our feet? The Earth is this vast, unread library just waiting for our modern technology to finally open the books.
Wow. What an incredible thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep looking deeper into the science, and above all, stay insanely curious.